To start, can you tell me what you know about where your family is originally from?
Sure, sure. So my father's side originated in Van, now Eastern Turkey, formerly Western Armenia. My mother's side, my grandfather was born in Dikranagert, also Western Armenia, now Eastern Turkey, now known as Diyarbakir, I believe, in Turkey. He was baptized there and he survived the Armenian genocide. His father was killed. His brother, as an infant, was killed. He originally thought he was orphaned, but his mother survived. He ended up reconnecting with her many years later and found that out. But in terms of the originations of the family, Vonetsi, or Vaughn, from Vaughn on my father's side, and my mother's side, Tikranagert, my grandfather. But my grandmother on my mother's side is from Marseille, France. She was French. French and Spanish. So when my grandfather, after the genocide, ended up in an orphanage in Turkey, after the orphanage, he ended up in Marseille, the south of France, where he met my grandmother and married. So he married a French woman.
Wow.
So my grandmother on my mom's side was from Marseille, but her father was French, and her mother, my great grandmother, was from Spain. But my father's side, don't know as much about the origination of my grandmother's family. My grandmother on my father's side was from Van, and now Eastern Turkey, formerly Western Armenia. And my grandfather on my father's side, his family originated from Erzurum and Gars, also formerly Western Armenia, now Eastern Turkey.
Could you tell me what you know about what your father's side of the family was like in the old country? Anything you know about what their lives were like?
I don't know much, unfortunately, I don't know much, but I know that they ended up leaving Vaughn and leaving the area before the genocide.
Oh.
Before the genocide, so they were able to escape before it happened, or they left before it happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you know when they left?
I don't.
Do you know
Yeah.
where they went?
Yes, yes. So, well, first of all, my grandmother and my grandfather met here in the U.S.,
Mm.
but their families obviously preceded. Obviously, I know for sure my father's mother, my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
her family left and ended up in Iran.
Mm.
I believe they ended up in Isfahan and then in Tehran, and then they grew up in Tehran. So my grandmother grew up in Tehran, and actually till about like 14ish.
Mm.
I know, and my great uncle, who's still with us, he's 91, just turned
Wow.
91 last month. He was born in Isfahan, Isfahan.
Mm-hmm.
So they left Iran in the 40s or 50s is when they left. But my grandmother grew up there up to about 14. My uncle was born there. They're a few years. They were several years apart in
Okay.
age. So and he's still my great uncle's still living, which is great. Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
And then do you know where dad's your grandfather on your dad's side, where their family went?
I do not. I do not know that, but I know that they ended up in Oakland,
Okay.
California, later, like 40s, 50s, is just like my mom's side. On my mom's side, my grandfather, they had a shop in Marseille, my grandfather and my grandmother. And my grandfather ended up learning that his mother survived and was living in Fresno, California.
Oh.
She had remarried, had a whole nother family.
Oh my goodness.
When he found that out, he sold everything in Marseille. He sold everything. They lived well there, sold everything and came to Fresno
Wow.
to reunite with his mother. The challenge was there was no French community in Fresno at the time. And so it was very difficult for them to find work, to connect with people. There was no French consulate there or anything, so the French consulate was in San Francisco. So they left Fresno and ended up in San Francisco on my mom's
Mm.
side. So my mom was born in San Francisco. My father was born in San Francisco as well, but his family ended up in Oakland, California, in the East Bay, whereas my mom's family ended up in San Francisco. And so they ended up, my parents ended up meeting here in the U.S. They were both born here, and they met at the church actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
the church events and things in San Francisco and in Oakland.
Great.
Yeah.
Could you tell me anything you know about what your family's early life, your grandparents, their early life in America was like, and Fresno or in Oakland as well?
Sure, sure. They did very well. Tradesmen. They owned shops in the Bay Area on my dad's side. My mother's side, they had a very challenging life. They worked. Like, I believe my grandfather was in janitorial
Mm.
at schools. My grandmother was a cook in San Francisco, and they worked, more blue collar type jobs, but they did amazing with what they had, and what they were able to build was absolutely amazing in San Francisco, especially coming from just the challenging immigration challenges they face. Not being from here, not speaking the language was amazing. So uh, they both sides ended up doing very well after initial struggle
Mm.
coming here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you tell me more about that initial struggle and any stories you've heard about that as well?
They never shared stories like that. I know that it was hard, long hours, especially at the school for my grandmother. She was a phenomenal cook, and so it actually made sense that she was working
Mm.
in the kitchen there. Actually, when I think about it, the students were fortunate to have her
Yeah.
as a chef. But my grandfather on my mom's side, yeah, he was always doing work, hands-on labor type work, just all the way through. So it was challenging. And I know that it was very challenging for them, especially several years early on, just because not being familiar with the language and not having that French community that they were coming from Marseille to San Francisco. Yes, there was a French community. Yes, there was a consulate, but they were still very much foreigners. So I know that that was very challenging for them. But it's amazing what they were able to do. Looking back on it, it's just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely amazing.
And
Yeah.
can you tell me what languages your family members spoke?
Yes. So my mother's side was or is French, uh, Marseille dialect French, but it's a little different than Parisian, and Armenian. My grandfather spoke Armenian. My grandmother, his wife, learned some Armenian because she had to be with his grandmother back when they had not come to the U.S. yet.
Mm-hmm.
She worked closely with my great grandmother who spoke Armenian, and so she picked up a lot of Armenian from his grandmother.
Wow.
And then on my dad's side, it's Armenian and Farsi,
Mm-hmm.
because being in Iran, they learned Farsi.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And can you tell me more about what your parents' lives were like as they were born in San Francisco?
Hmm.
Did they continue to grow up in the Bay Area?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm second generation
Mm-hmm.
here in California. Both of my parents were born in San Francisco. My mom lived and grew up in San Francisco, went to all girls high school, Mercy High School, all girls. And my dad went to Oakland High School. He grew up in the East Bay in Oakland, California. And they met through church events, I believe, in Oakland and in San Francisco, because they would go. And then, of course, my grandfather on my mom's side, her father, was extremely active
Mm-hmm.
and became very active in the Armenian community and brought his family to many events. And so that's how my father and my mother met. But yeah, they grew up, fairly, because they're first generation, both of them, and so it's a little bit different. Obviously they're the first generation here. They're the ones that are like the initial generation that's here growing up, facing the challenges that come with parents that are immigrants. they had very healthy upbringings, but I mean, they didn't. They grew up really through the civil rights movement, which was probably a larger influence than anything else, than even more so than them being of immigrant parents. So that's I've heard more about that from my parents about just growing up during that time being challenging because you were seeing just that whole movement and the challenges that came from that. Witnessing that firsthand. My father would share with me how he remembered hearing he could hear the gunfire from like the Black Panthers firing at law enforcement around Lake Merritt. My father lived and grew up near Lake Merritt, very close to Lake Merritt in Oakland. And on my mom's side, she would get bullied here and there. She would have to ride public transit. People would call her, like Chiquita or like things like that, like Hispanic names like that, because that's what they thought she was. Where of course she was not. She's Armenian and French and Spanish. So those are the kind of things that I heard from them. But again, nothing like having to come as immigrants, not knowing the language at all, and then having to build from ground up. So we're very fortunate. I'm even more fortunate myself and my sister, just as a second generation here. Like, we haven't gone through anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Sure.
And I'm curious, so you mentioned that your grandfather on your mom's side
Hmm.
was very much involved in the Armenian
Hmm.
community as well as the church.
Hmm.
Will you share more about that involvement and what those kinds of organizing and events looked like?
Sure. Sure. So I think he was more so attending events. I don't believe he took on any leadership roles in the community, but he was always there. He attended St. Gregory Armenian Church in San Francisco. And a lot of the people that I work with now in the community remember him fondly, just how strong of an Armenian he was, and just fond memories of him being there. And he would just spend, very long time after church talking with members of the community about all the current issues, what's happening in Armenia, what's happening here in the diaspora. He was very very meticulous about reading the newspaper, and especially the Armenian news. He was always trying to stay up to date on that, and he would attend every event he could. And of course, I grew up always hearing from him as a survivor of the Armenian genocide. He would always tell me, never forget, always remember. And all of my service in the Armenian community is in his honor. It is completely in his honor because of what he went through and his family went through, and how I grew up and was raised hearing from him just how we must never forget. We must always remember. And so my service on the Armenian community and the church, it's in his honor because of it. Yeah.
And was St. Gregory Armenian Church the church that your parents met at?
It may have been an event that was related to the church or one of the organizations from that church. But actually they may have met at my current church that I go to, St. Vartan in Oakland. They may have met there at one of the galas or banquets or something. I think either the bishop was in town from the Western Diocese, or another leader in the church was in town, and they may have met at that event. If it wasn't a St. Gregory event, it was something like that. So
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
And on your father's side of the
Mhm.
family, what would you assess was their sort of involvement in the Armenian
Yes, so actually very involved, very, very involved. So my father grew up in the ACYO, the Armenian Church Youth Organization. My grandmother, my father's mother, grew up through the Armenian Church Youth Organization, was a leader in that. And then she also was a leader in the AGBU, the Armenian General Benevolent Union. And I grew up always hearing about how important the AGBU was and how powerful the work of the AGBU was and is, and what a great organization it is, and how much we really should be a part of it and support it. And that's been very instrumental in my life and in me she made both my sister and I, when we were born, life members of
Wow.
AGBU. So I was literally born into it,
Mhm.
and it was, in mid mid 20s, I guess, my early mid 20s is my mid 20s when I really started to get more involved with the AGBU through the AGBU Young Professionals. And so I tried to hold off on joining leadership so I could just go enjoy the events, and not have to plan anything. I tried to hold it off as long as I could, but it wasn't very long at all. It was only a couple of years I was able to do that until I finally joined the organizing committee, the steering committee, and eventually became chair. And I'm proud. I'm proud to continue that legacy of leadership in the AGBU, following my grandmother's footsteps on my father's side. So, yeah.
And do you know what inspired her to become involved in that organization?
You know what? I don't. That's a great question. I could ask my uncle. I should ask my uncle that. That's a really good question. I don't know. I know that cultural things were important to her. Armenian culture, whether it was dancing or food. Again, she came from the ACYO, the church youth organization, so there's a lot of fellowship in that, and staying close to the church and making strong friendships and bonds through that organization. So I imagine that really the next logical step was AGBU after the youth organization, and eventually she was chair of the San Francisco of the Oakland chapter of AGBU, down the line, where she led that organization. Now there's only the Silicon Valley chapter. There was a San Francisco and Oakland chapter. They combined at one point. It was San Francisco, Oakland. Now there's Silicon Valley, which is great that we have that chapter around. But the young professionals were around since 1998, and still going. Hope to continue that and hope to bring in leadership that will continue the legacy for a long time. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And do you know if your parents spoke any Armenian growing up? Were they taught that?
So my mother, they spoke French in the home.
Okay.
So my mom, she'd learned very little Armenian, but my father did. They spoke Eastern Armenian in the home. So he learned that and was fluent. He still is. Obviously, doesn't use it as much as he used to, but he can still understand and he can still pick it up. And so he did speak it growing up. Eastern Armenian in Iran, they speak Eastern Armenian. The diaspora there speaks Eastern Armenian. In the country, they speak Eastern Armenian in Armenia now. But the dialect might have been a tiny bit different in Iran, but it's very very close still. So,
I
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Um, I was curious. So
Mm,
it sounds like your grandparents were very much involved in Armenian community and
mm,
culture in different ways. And
mm.
did you see that also seeping into what your parents were involved in, either in the church or any other organizations?
Yes. So my father also was involved in the ACYO and the athletic program at St. Barton Church in Oakland. My mother, again, she grew up attending a lot of the events. I don't believe she was never involved in ACYO. I don't believe, but I know that she continues a lot of the legacy to this day. Where she's chair of the cultural committee at St. Barton in Oakland, and she does a great job with that. They host events, multiple times a year, ranging from it could be book reviews or film screenings, or we just did a concert in honor of Gomi Das. He was a Vartabed, or a celibate priest, and he composed much of the liturgy of the church, the Armenian church. So there's a Gomidas version of the Armenian church liturgy, and there's another version as well. Our church, St. Barton, still does the Gomidas one. Not many of the churches do in the diocese. We might actually be the only one. But it was just the anniversary of the 90th anniversary of his passing. So of Gomidas's passing, and so we just did that event at church. That was part of the cultural committee, and so it was very well done. So she continues to be very involved in that way, and she served on the parish council at my church for think 16 years. She's had four-year terms, I believe, over time, not all at once,
Mm-hmm.
but over time. My father has served on various committees for the church, financial and so on. And he was in the athletic program and the youth group as a kid. So
Hmm. I'm
yeah.
interested in, you mentioned the youth group and the athletic programs. What kind of went on in these different organizations within the church?
Sure. So there was a lot of overlap. Same thing with the Sunday school at the church. There's a lot of overlap in the youth. We see less overlap now, which is something we're really trying to address. But growing up myself, I mean, we did everything. It was Sunday school. It was the youth group, the Armenian Church Youth Organization, and it was athletics. So it was for me, for boys, it's basketball. For girls, it's volleyball. For basketball, we were very active. My father too, back in the day. I think there's leagues in Oakland area or in the Bay Area. We would have teams that would compete in leagues, juniors, children, adults even that would compete. A lot of times we're really competing against Greeks. That was kind of the league. It was like the Greek league. And for the girls volleyball, I believe much of the competition has been based around the ACYO Sports Weekend, which takes place in Fresno. That's every Memorial Day weekend in Fresno. That's been going for since like the 50s. I participated in it. My father participated in it. So
Wow,
I
that's
go way
great.
back. I believe my grandmother did. If it wasn't sports weekend, she was involved in volleyball and dance on my father's side for sure. Like, and that was through the church. It was through HBU. It was through various things. She really loved Armenian dance, and she was really fond of her time in Armenian dance in the Bay Area. She would always speak very fondly of that.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's very cool.
yeah,
So I think this is a good place to transition a little bit
sure,
into your own life and
sure, sure.
upbringing.
Thank
Can
you.
you tell me a bit more about where you grew up?
Sure. Here in San Leandro, California, right here in San Leandro, California. I was born in Los Angeles
Mm.
at Westwood, the medical center at UCLA. My father was going to school there. He was in med school.
Oh wow.
He hated it, and he left med school. He started taking finance classes at UCLA, and he ended up finding a role as a trader on the then what was it, Pacific Option Exchange, which the New York Stock Exchange bought, I think, in the late '80s, and it's now that just absorbed under the New York Stock Exchange. But he was a floor trader in options in San Francisco, and so that brought my parents back to the Bay Area. And I was 2 when we moved back, and so both of my grandparents, both sides, were here still, and so that was obviously very challenging for my parents being down there alone, raising me as a young child, and so it was good timing to really be back near the family,
Mm-hmm.
and so it worked out. And so he did that for a few years, and then ended up getting into computer software engineering. But I've grown up here virtually my entire life. We came back when I was 2 years old. My sister was born here in San Leandro
Mm-hmm.
as well, so we've been in the Bay Area. My sister her whole life, me almost my entire life. So
That's great.
yeah.
And what was it like growing up for you? Can you share any childhood activities or other things you're involved with?
Sure, sure. So growing up as a young child, I came up through the school system here in San Leandro, and in middle school is when I started the youth group. So I was 13 when I started ACYO, the Armenian Church Youth Organization. And, as a kid outside of school, I was very involved as well in volunteering in the community. There was a summer camp up here, actually not that far away from my parents. It's like about less than a mile away up the road. If you go up Estadio, if you go left up Estadio and you go all the way up, you reach Lake Chabot. You reach Chabot Park, and that's where the day camp was. I have very fond memories of that for many summers. I did as a camper and then as a staff a couple years. Uh, it wasn't until I was 17, I waited way too long, where I first went as staff and as a camper for the Armenian Church summer camp in the Square National Forest. It's east of Fresno, about an hour east of Fresno. And I first went there as staff. They needed help with staff in the first week, and I was going to go up as a camper, the oldest you could be as a camper, which was 17, in the fourth week. And so they got me in there as staff, which was a blast. I was a counselor, and then I went that fourth week for the first time as a camper, and it was just amazing. Like just the feeling you get when you're meeting other Armenians from across the entire diocese, and just the bonds you automatically share. And it was just, I have really fond memories of that. I wish I was able to be a camper more than just that one time, but then I went on to be staff for many years. And so that was a big part of my upbringing. And that coincided with my involvement in the youth group, the ACYO. And there's a lot of overlap in terms of the youth that participate in the camp and ACYO. And so you're just building upon friendships, which was great. And let's see, I mean, again, there was volunteering here in the community that was separate completely from the Armenian community as well, which was great. It was really great to meet other students and make friends from just the greater community. So I'd say that was really the bulk of my upbringing. Was that just being really active in the community. I mean, there was summer reading programs, there was the camp, there were volunteer activities year round, and then I had the whole Armenian component as well, all the way up. I was Sunday school. I came up through the Sunday school program at St. Vartan Church in Oakland, and so that was really important and a big part of my faith formation. I would say ACYO was a huge, it's been such an instrumental part of my life. I was just mentioning this yesterday. There was an event where we honored the athletes that participated in the Sports Weekend tournament this past May, and I was emceeing, and I shared with the youth that were there how just instrumental ACYO is for my life, because it's offered me my faith formation. It was a huge part of my faith formation, the ACYO, because there was retreats, Bible studies. We would camp. I would connect camp with that as well. But it was just countless of these experiences, countless experiences like this, where it's Bible studies to retreats to we do overnights at the church, where we'd have discussions with clergy. I eventually ended up serving on the central council of the ACYO. That was much later. That was when I was already in college, and then it was my last 2 years of college and my first 2 years out of college that I served on that. So that was the governing body for the Western Diocese, all of the ACYO chapters, which is 20 to 30 chapters across the whole West, and it's growing. I mean, when I was involved, we were Arizona and California primarily. Now you have Washington State, you have Arizona, you have California, of course, and other chapters are popping up. I mean, my Armenian involvement has just been such a huge part of my life. It really has, and it continues to be. I'm proud of that, but I also, I think a little bit later after college, I have more to share. I could share with you more about involvement, greater community involvement.
I'm curious. So there were certain Armenian-centered spaces like the church and that camp you mentioned, but outside of that, in everyday life or in regular school where you attended, were there a lot of Armenian students, or was it not very much of a?
No, no, not at all. So that's something that's so different for the experience of Armenians, especially up here in the Bay Area versus Southern California, and specifically certain parts of Southern California, right? Glendale, Pasadena, Burbank. You're going to have a lot of other Armenians at all ages, but here, very, very few. For middle school and high school, it was me and one other Armenian, and he's one of my best friends. One of my best friends, and so we shared that experience. He was a year ahead of me, so he graduated, and I ended up being. I think there may have been one other Armenian student in the school, but another grade, or they would come and go, but it was very, very, very few. It was mainly me and one of my best friends. But my senior year, it was just me and again maybe a couple underclassmen that may have come in, but I never really got to know them, if anything. And it was the same thing in college. It was not many Armenians in college, a few more, but again, it's so spread out, so many students, so many different subjects, so many different degree courses that I was not really around many. I remember actually, this was uncomfortable at the time. It's not related to a question at all that you're asking, but I guess it kind of puts into perspective just how few Armenians there were around. This was my freshman year in college. This was the year 2000, fall 2000. I'm in a 200-person lecture hall at Cal State Hayward. It's now Cal State East Bay. And it was psychology, I believe. I don't know why she brought this up, the professor, but she asked, "Who is anyone here Armenian? Anyone here in the class Armenian?" I'm the only one raising my hand. And she was talking about how Armenians, because Armenians have inbred for so long together, or there's something different about our blood. There's something a little bit different about our blood than others. I don't know if it's like a sickle cell or something's different about our blood because we've been primarily, obviously it's changing now, right? That's changing now, especially in the diaspora. But it again, that puts in perspective for you just me and this sea of other students, and then everyone starts turning back looking at me, and I'm just like, great, this is great. But it was kind of funny at the same time, and I just tried to roll with it, but it was a little bit uncomfortable because she started talking about, you're different from everybody else here, your blood's different. I'm just like, okay, like, thank you. Thanks for calling this out right now. But again, that puts in perspective for you. That's at Cal State Hayward, which is a very diverse school. I think it may be more diverse now than it was then. And again, the high school and middle school, very few, very few. My sister, same experience, but again, it's very different from other Armenian diaspora communities, especially in Southern California, I think.
Can you talk a little bit about what seeing family was like for you growing
Mhm.
up, and any holidays you spent together, and
Sure,
I don't know, memories with your grandparents?
sure. Thank you. It's very, very fond memories. Miss them dearly. Pray for them every day. I have very, very fond memories of so many gatherings with my grandparents. On my mother's side, my grandfather, and we would call her Mime, which was like short in French for grandma. My grandpa and my Mime, they would they would put they would host often for every major holiday, Easter, Christmas, New Year's, you name it. They would host most of the major holidays. We'd have these really phenomenal dinners. My grandma was a phenomenal cook, and then my I had uncles that would come over on my mom from my mom's side, and we would be there. Really large gatherings. Over the years, that it shrunk, which is sad, but it's part of life. But I have very, very fond memories of that, and I would love going to those family gatherings. And then from my father's side, my grandmother, I have wonderful fond memories of spending time with my grandmother as well. I mean, we have really fond memories of her taking me and my sister to go see live theater in Alameda. She lived in Alameda here in the East Bay. My great uncle still lives in Alameda. He's still there, and so she would take us out to see local community theater, and that was really fond memories of that. We would go out to have really nice dinners, really nice meals together, and of course, any of the major family get-togethers, Mother's Day, Father's Day, we would all be together and celebrating those. And so I'm very, very grateful for those memories and those experiences, and we try to continue it to this day. My my parents have become grandparents. My sister has 3 kids, and I'm grateful to be an uncle. It's a lot of fun, and we try to continue some of those traditions.
Wow, that's so
Yeah,
great.
yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about your experience in college and
Mhm.
engagement with Armenian organizations then.
Sure. So I did a lot of both actually in college. I got involved with the orientation team at college. I think I did that, was it my sophomore year or my junior year? I wish I did it all 4 years. but that was just a blast. I had so much fun with that because we were the first people, the first students that incoming students were seeing. Right. I remember when I think I was first exposed to it as a freshman there, and I went through the orientation. I was like, this is really fun. Like, these guys are really cool. I'd love to do this. And so I can't remember if I started it my sophomore year, the second year, or if I'd started it my junior year. I think it was my junior year and then my senior year that I did it for those 2 years. But it was just so much fun. Like, I made some really great friendships and connections through that. And I mean, I was able to take a lot of the experience and learning from ACYO, the youth organization, and my leadership in that, and public speaking and community building and just organizing and activating the community. I was able to take a lot of that experience and bring it to the to Cal State Hayward at the time, and really be one of those first students that are helping acclimate the incoming students. And so it was for freshmen, and there was also a little bit later in the year one for transfer students, and that was just a blast. I have really fond memories of that. Still have some great friends from that. I wish we stayed even more in touch than we have, but I know that we still share a strong friendship. And then, of course, I continued in the Armenian community. I was a couple of my years of college overlapped with a couple of years on the ACYO Central Council. So, and that was really, really great learning experience and leadership experience. And that, I do believe, my experience within the ACYO, I do believe has been instrumental in the current role I have professionally. I mean, I am the Western Region Director of the Armenian Assembly of America, which is a nonprofit Armenian advocacy organization. And my connections that I began to make through the ACYO, many of them I still continue to this day through the church and the network of the Armenian community, leaders in the community, other benefactors or donors from the community, the bishop. I mean, I met him when he was first brought here, and he was first elected and appointed the bishop of the Western Diocese. I was there. I was there for that at that moment, and so he's someone that's also a dear friend. And all the clergy in the diocese I'm close with, but there's a lot of overlap with the clergy and connecting with the communities across the West. And that translates directly to my role as Western Region Director of the Armenian Assembly. So, again, long-winded way of saying that my leadership in the Armenian community continued through college. And after the ACYO, my time on the ACYO Central Council, I then started to get more involved in the Bay Area Armenian community and leadership. The Armenian community maintains the Mount Davidson Cross, which is a 104-foot tall concrete cross in San Francisco. It's at the highest peak of San Francisco, Mount Davidson. There's a park at the top of the hill, and the Armenian community bought the cross from the city of San Francisco in 1997. The reason I bring that up, after ending my time on the ACYO Central Council, the first thing I did right away, and I knew I was going to do this because of my grandfather, was I got involved with the Armenian Genocide Commemoration Committee here in the Bay Area. And so that was the first thing I did immediately after my time on the ACYO Central Council ended. I jumped right into that, and I've still been involved with it ever since. So we're talking like 2006, 2007 was the first involvement. And then for me, and I told all of them, look, I share with them, though, this is so important to me, just like it is to all of us. And very, very grateful for my opportunity, the time and the opportunity I've had to be a leader within the Bay Area Armenian Genocide Commemoration Committee. Still involved with that. And so that overlapped with the Mount Davidson Cross Committee. I did that for 3 years. And then I was really excited to join a diocese-wide committee again, and I joined the Armenian Church Camp Board. So the camp that I was a camper and a counselor at for so many years, I was a counselor, I was a staff more than I was a camper. But they have two committees. There's a committee, the camp committee, that runs all the programming of the 4 weeks of summer camp. Then there's the camp board that really oversees the grounds. So whether it's maintenance or uh, further development on the grounds, if it's going to be new construction or renovation or anything, the camp board was really overseeing all of that. If there were other organizations that were interested in renting the grounds, the board oversaw that. And so I enjoyed my time on that, but it was also that, and the cross was taking a little bit too much, especially because all of this kind of overlapped, and I was getting more involved with the young professionals, the AGBU young professionals. And so all of this really started to take off after my time in school and after my involvement with the ACYO. I stayed ACYO very long. I mean, like, technically it has an upper age of 30 for the ACYO. I was very active with it all the way into my late 20s. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to step into another role with that. And I took on more of an advisory type of role, which I'm still happy to take on as much as I can. Now we have a formal youth director at St. Barton, which is great. But for years, I was really trying to help fulfill that role of advisory, with the youth groups, helping them with organizing events around the four pillars of the organization, which is worship, service, education, and fellowship. So anyway, I'm going into a lot of detail for you, but all of this kind of stemmed from following my after college, and just really, this is really how I've given you basically the whole path that I took getting involved in the Armenian community here and diocese wide. Another diocese wide committee I joined was the Christian Education Council, which now that was a little bit later on. That oversees the Sunday school program across the diocese. I'm not sure it's active anymore at the moment, but I was on that for a few years. And that was great because, again, I'm really fond of my experience within Sunday school, within ACYO, and I was trying to find ways to help bridge that more, those organizations more, because there's a lot of opportunity for that. And then really, the AGBU is really what I've put probably the bulk of my time into. Of course, there's been all these organizations and committees and things I've been a part of, and I'm still a part of to this day, the April 24th Armenian Genocide Commemoration and the HB Young Professionals. That will be phasing out soon or eventually. Not as much of a YP as I used to be, but young professional. But really, the goal is really making sure that there's leadership in place that's able to continue it, and that's been the challenge, finding people that are willing to take on leadership in the community. It's been harder to find for some reason in recent years. I guess I can't fault people for really being protective of their time, but it'd be nice. We just have to find people that are interested in really giving back to the community. But
I'm curious about the Armenian Genocide Commemoration Committee. What
sure.
kind of things did that organization?
Sure. So the main objective and the main event, or events plural, that committee puts together is for April 24, which is the Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. So it's the commemoration events on that day or surrounding that day. So what we've typically done, and again, every year it could change, but what we've done very regularly is there's an event on April 24 where it's a community event that's a mixture of you'll have a keynote speaker, you'll have cultural performances throughout the event. We might have dignitaries or elected officials that join us to share camaraderie or to speak and address the community in solidarity. And we'll have youth that'll speak or perform, and it's really just a day for the entire community to come together, or an evening program to come together in commemoration of the 1.5 million Armenian martyrs, or our now they are now sanctified martyrs of the Armenian genocide. In 2015, the Catholicos of all Armenians in Armenia at Echmiadzin canonized all 1.5 million of the victims of the Armenian genocide. So they're now they're now saints, which is amazing. So that actually changed things for us, because before it was much more requiem focused. If there was any kind of prayer service or cleric involvement, it would be requiem. Now they're saints. There's no requiem anymore. So it's a very different prayer. So in addition to an event on April 24, we 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 usually have this past year was the only difference because April 24th fell on Easter Sunday. So it made it a little bit challenging. Obviously, all the churches have Easter service. It'd be hard to ask everybody to come to Mount Davidson Cross. But Mount Davidson Cross, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the Mount Davidson Cross was bought by the Armenian community from San Francisco. Separation of church and state in 1987 is when that happened. But that is the Armenian genocide monument for the Bay Area, for Northern California, for San Francisco Bay Area. So we almost always will have some sort of event up there that tends to be much more faith-based, prayer focused. There will be speakers, there will be some sort of cultural performances, but there also is a prayer element there that's a much larger portion of the program. And again, it's a very special prayer for the sanctified martyrs, and it's no longer a requiem. I'll just add, it's called the AGCC, Armenian Genocide Commemorative Committee for Northern California. So there's the event at Mount Davidson Cross. There's an event on April 24, and then sometimes we'll do film screenings or other events other times throughout the month. Usually centered around the month of April. Usually centered around a couple of weeks before or after. Usually not after. Usually before and then on April 24. This past April, we had a film screening for My Sweet Land. We had the filmmaker here, Sadin Harabedian. It was phenomenal. It's about a family that survived the Artsakh War of 2020 in Nagorno-Karabakh, and it follows their journey through the eyes of their 11-year-old son. It's just phenomenal. I'm so glad that we were able to organize that event. That was on April 15, this past April. And so we had a film screening. We had the event on we actually had the event on, we had a film screening on the 3rd, we had the film screening on the 15th. We had the April 24 commemorative event the Thursday before April 24. And on April 24 at the cross, people were allowed to place a flower, and there was music and things playing at the cross, but there wasn't a formal program this year. But we did still have something at the memorial, because that is our memorial. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, great.
Sure.
And so sounds like you've been a part of the AGBU for quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I was curious how you've seen that organization change and grow over the years.
Sure. So I've seen so many versions of our signature event, the AGBU San Francisco Winter Gala. I've seen it have well over 300 to have about 200, a little bit less, young professionals from all over the world come. But it's been phenomenal. That's our signature event that started in the year 2000. The chapter started in LA in 1995. Our chapter in San Francisco started in 1998. So not that far after. We're one of the first chapters, and it's been really proud of our community, and just to have had this opportunity to be an involved organization and a leader of the organization, to keep the legacy going in the community, just to have it continue now for more than 30 years. It's been really great. So in terms of the changes, I could share very simply, like the events in the past, there was like the biggest draw were like the club nights, the bar nights, this, that. Like we get well over 100 people like that, no problem. Even here in the Bay Area, in LA, that's you get 100, 200 people at the drop of a dime anywhere around Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena. Right here, it's a little harder to get that large of a group to come out, but we would get them to come out to bar nights or club nights type of things. Now, that's not what draws people as much as it did years ago. So people are much more interested in like the panel tech panel discussion, or something much more cultural, or maybe it's something more a lot really funny or engaging, like a comedy night. And so really one of the challenges, but also something that's been very rewarding as well, is reinventing over time, and trying to really reach the community, and bring events that the community is interested in. And so we've seen a lot of changes in that over time, and I think it's very positive. I think it's very positive changes. Sure, there's always a place for a bar night, or a club night, a lounge night. There's always a place for that, but really, the more meaningful, deeper conversations or events are what people are interested in, and something that we won't need to challenge ourselves to bring more of for our community.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned to me that you're visiting Armenia this year.
I am.
Will
I
that be
am.
your first time going, or have you been
It'll be my third
before?
time,
Okay, amazing.
but I haven't been in 10 years.
Wow.
So the last time I was there was September of 2015. So a little less than 10 years, but it's still too much of a gap between the visits. I want to be going much more often. I'm glad that it's actually the AGBU. It's an event called AGBU Focus, which is a global. It's kind of like our Winter Gala, but it's a day or two longer, and it's much more global. You'll get Armenians from all over the world, and like 400 or 500 plus Armenians from around the world that will come. This year it's in Yerevan, Armenia, the capital. And so, part of me feels like I shouldn't have needed an event or something to really get me to go back to Armenia, but I'm also grateful that it's given me that reason to go without any doubt at all. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go for that, and then I hope to be going much more often, not necessarily every year, but much more often than every 10 years. Because before that, my first time there was 2004, so it was 11-year gap, the between one and two, and now a 10-year gap between two and three. But I just have very fond memories and experiences touring all over the country, seeing just dozens and dozens of monasteries in the north and the south of the country. These are like 12th, 13th century monasteries, some even older, some a little newer. And it's just such a rich history. And, our faith, and the monasteries and our faith, dates back to 301 AD, Christianity in Armenia, and so it's so much a part of the fabric of culture and life, and the history of Armenia. And the first two times I was able to also go to Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh, and so I'm of course I'm upset that that won't be possible this time, but I do hope to get all the way to the border to see the situation, and down in Armenia's southern province of Syunik. That's a plan. It's a goal to get down there. Traveling with one of my best friends, it'll be his first time, and so anywhere we go, it's going to be the first time for him. But I'm very much looking forward to being back there. Very much looking forward to experiencing HBU Focus there, but then also really getting a chance to tour. I hope to get up to Gyumri. I haven't been to Gyumri in the north of Armenia since 2004, so it'll be 21 years since I've been there. So I'm looking forward to going back there, and then really just having a great experience. And so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Have you ever had the chance to visit your ancestral hometowns in modern day Turkey as well?
No, no, that is a goal. I would like to do that. I would really like to get to Gars, to Diyarbakir now, Dikranagar, to Van. I really would like to do that. So that is certainly on the list. And there actually are tours that make that accessible. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, I wanted to transition a bit into
Sure,
the forward looking part
sure,
of the
sure,
interview. Can you tell me what hopes you have for the future of the Armenian community, especially the Armenian community here in the
sure,
Bay Area?
sure, sure. So I think just cohesiveness, as much as possible, as much unity and cohesiveness as possible. We're fortunate here in the Bay Area that our community is very well connected, but sadly, there are divisions in the Armenian community. I'm not sure if you've heard this in other interviews, but there are sadly divisions in the Armenian community that are politically driven or politically divided. Our churches are divided. It's the same exact church service, the same exact faith and everything, but we have division in the church. Like, I don't know if that'll ever be completely merged, the churches, but I know our community and our community organizations certainly can be. I know that there can be a lot more. And we are fortunate here in the Bay Area. It's a smaller community where there is much more cohesion, there is much more collaboration. But really, a goal of mine is to just really foster more collaboration among all of our organizations, whether it's the youth organizations or the philanthropic organizations or the cultural organizations. We have a great opportunity to be even more collaborative in our community. And so that is a goal of mine. And I'm doing everything I can in my power to really facilitate that. I'm also doing that within my professional career with the Armenian Assembly of America. I'll be approaching 2 years. In August, it'll be 2 years in this role. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have this role because I've done so much work in the Armenian community as a volunteer to now have the opportunity to do it professionally and to do it for one of the leading or the leading advocacy organizations, educating on Armenian issues, meeting with our members of Congress, meeting with our members of the state legislature, activating in the community, hosting events in the community of all types, briefings in the community on our issues. These are all things that we're doing year round. And a lot of it, again, as I was saying earlier, to kind of bring things full circle, I really do believe a lot of my work in the youth group and ACYO, as well as in the community organizing, has helped prepare me for the role I have now, and is a large reason why I'm able to be in this role. So, but yes, collaboration um, amongst the community is a real goal, and it's something I really like to see even more of as we go forward.
Great. Yeah, and I would love to
Mm.
talk more about the Armenian Assembly of
Sure,
America.
sure.
What is your role met for that? Can you share a bit more?
Sure, sure. So I'm the Western Region Director of the Armenian Assembly of America. The Armenian Assembly was founded in 1972 in Washington, D.C., and it was actually founded as a true assembly of all Armenian organizations to have a voice in Washington. That's really what it was founded on. It wasn't until a few years later that there was kind of groups that were splitting off from that. But it was really a true assembly, and that's really what it was meant to be. And we still approach it from that standpoint. We reach out to all facets of the community, to all of the churches, all the different organizations for the effort of advocacy, really. So speaking out for pro-Armenian issues, on pro-Armenian issues. So the assembly was founded to educate on Armenian issues, to help really build stronger ties between the U.S. government and Armenia, to also help with development and environmental projects and programs in Armenia, and also to really help encourage more Armenian diaspora participation in the U.S. democratic process. And so my role here in the West is helping lead that effort in the entire Western region. And, so whether that's interacting and interfacing with the Armenian student organizations at universities to get them engaged and to apply and work in our internship program. We have an internship program in Washington, D.C., and in Yerevan. DC started in 1977. Yerevan internship program started in 1999. So we're approaching 50 years for DC. And so it continues. Our interns they're active right now in DC and in Yerevan. It's really great. And so that's something that's been really fun part of the job, getting to interact with the college students, getting them activated. We also have a national advocacy summit that's every year, once a year, sometimes twice a year. Usually we have in the spring and the fall. We had 67 college students join us this year in Washington, D.C., this past April, to advocate on Capitol Hill in Washington on pro-Armenian issues. We also do similar activity in Sacramento. That's usually around April 24th. There'll be an advocacy day in Sacramento. And so just really building community organizing. We'll do events. We'll have social events around all across the country. But again, my responsibility here in the West. We do multiple events throughout the year in Los Angeles. We're working on one this fall, November 2nd is what we're working on. It'll be a panel of speakers, Armenians in entertainment, and telling our story and how to use our platforms for advocacy. That'll be a panel, that'll be a reception, and then there'll be a dinner. We had a luncheon earlier in the year in March. We honored a state senator, California state senator that had retired or had left. He had termed out of the state senate. We honored him for his pro-Armenian advocacy. This was a man that's been to Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh 4 times. This is State Senator Anthony Portantino. So we honored him. In that same month, we honored the LA police and fire for their heroism during the LA fires in January. So we had representatives from Pasadena and Glendale Fire, and we did a special prayer for them at St. Gregory Armenian Church in Pasadena. And then we had a luncheon where elected officials were there, and we recognized the police and the fire men and women that were there and honored them and thanked them for their heroism. That was very special. That was a very special event. So these are the type of events and more throughout the year that we'll do. And again, it's just all to bring the community together and to really educate on Armenian issues, pro-Armenian issues, and really just help get the community activated.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
you've
you.
been incredibly involved in getting the community
Yeah,
activated. I can definitely realize that.
thank you. Yeah.
I'm curious, do you have an achievement or a specific event or moment you're most proud of in your career?
Sure. Well, I'm very proud to be in this role right now. I was a volunteer. I've been a volunteer with the Armenian Assembly since 2006. That was the first time I attended the National Advocacy Conference that year. And I was blown away by it. The access we have to our elected officials and the events that were held. There's galas, there's receptions, it was just amazing. And so I've been hooked on it since then in terms of the advocacy side. I've also volunteered and advocated locally with the Armenian National Committee. So that's the other nationwide, they're actually a chapter-based organization. The other Armenian advocacy organization. And so I work closely with them now in this seat too. And actually, I do a lot to try to collaborate with them and help us work together on the effort because, we're stronger together for sure. But so from the advocacy piece, it started here locally. But then my first experience with the Armenian Assembly was 2006, and it was in Washington, D.C., and I was hooked on it from there. So I've volunteered with the Assembly ever since then, and now I'm really grateful and proud to have this role as Western Region Director. With the AGBU, I'll share with you my proudest achievement with the AGBU young professionals would be after the war in Artsakh in 2020, Nagorno-Karabakh. We lost more than 4,000 of our men and women soldiers, families displaced, families broken up, refugees, and so on. There was a campaign that I helped initiate through the HB Young Professionals under what's called YP Cares. So AGBU YP Cares is really the philanthropic effort of the Young Professional Network globally. But I instituted a matching program where all of our chapters would collectively donate and contribute a certain amount, and then all of our chapters would go out and raise a match to match it. So following the lead of AGBU Central Office, the global AGBU network, which they did a matching program for Artsakh, and they've done multiple matching programs over time where they'll raise the central board, which is based in New York, the board members all over the world, but the central office is based in New York. They'll put forth a certain amount, and then they ask for donations for a match. And so it was really following that lead. I was like, why shouldn't our network be able to do that? Why can't we do that? And so we raised over $80,000 from that match, and it was in a very short amount of time. That was the really great thing about it. I mean, this was like late, it was like December of 2020, I believe, that we instituted it, and it went till like March of 21. And so it's during COVID. It's after the war, and what we were able to do, I'm so proud of. I mean, especially coming out of the war. During the war, raising money was, I don't want to say easier, but there was a very, very vibrant global grassroots effort to support the war effort, and raise money for humanitarian causes surrounding the war. Coming out of that, there was a lot of fatigue. There was a lot of stress. Of course, really a lot of sadness, of course, of losing the war and just the really tragic situation. And so I'm very proud of being able to uh, institute that program and to get the support of the global network to raise the money that we did coming out of all of that, and then how we were able to do it so quickly. So yeah,
That is amazing.
yeah.
It's very impressive.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. And
Yes,
what does being Armenian mean to you? It's a tough
yes. What does being Armenian mean to me? Well, I really think it's a collection of everything that I've chosen to put all my time into. So with faith as a foundation, I'm very honored and proud to be an Armenian apostolic Christian. I'm grateful to my parents for raising me through the church, and the church has really offered me so much in my life, from leadership opportunities to again faith formation and just really lifelong friendships, and of course the spiritual fulfillment. So really, really, with faith as a formation, serving the church is, I serve on the altar at St. Barton Armenian Church, and I'm still very connected to the youth group. I'm still very connected to different organizations within the church, but really with really serving the church as a foundation, and then being Armenian, to me, it's being Armenian Christian and serving my community, helping bring my community together, whether it's around social events or advocacy or cultural events, really keeping our community together, preserving and promoting our Armenian heritage and identity, which is literally the mission of AGBU. I literally almost verbatim just mentioned the mission of AGBU. So really, for me, that's really what it is. And with faith, serving the church and then serving the community is what I've really made my life's journey, my life's mission. And I've done that through my church and through the AGBU Young Professionals here in Northern California, and now through advocacy professionally. And I will share that I have this role. I mean, Assembly Western Region Director, but I haven't stopped my volunteer involvement either, and I don't intend to. I still really plan to be very involved in the Armenian community. And once I'm done with the Young Professionals, I plan to continue with HBU Silicon Valley. And so, really, I hope I've answered the question, but really, that's what being Armenian is to me. It's really, really being a leader in the community, helping bring my community together, and really to really just keep us united and keep us centered on our faith and our culture, is really what it means to me.